Hi, welcome to You
Me
and TV. I'm Mike.
I'm Gia.
And today we're going to be talking about the pilot episode of Seinfeld.
Seinfeld was created by Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David. Season 1 premiered on NBC on July 5th, 1989, and it aired for 9 seasons.
All 9 seasons are currently streaming on Hulu, and the pilot episode title is The Seinfeld Chronicles, although it does have some alternate titles, including Good News, Bad News, and Pilot.
Yeah, and there is an episode of Seinfeld from, I think, season 4 that's titled The Pilot, and that's something different.
This is the pilot episode.
Yeah.
Not the episode titled Pilot.
This one is...
not titled The Pilot.
Yeah.
This feels like this would be an episode.
So what's the deal with the episode title?
Gosh. All right, so
okay.
hey, look, that was terrible. We all know, I mean, I'm assuming we all know the show Seinfeld. Some people know. I've talked to people who have never seen the show before.
Did you keep talking to them
I
after
stopped
that revelation?
immediately. But what we always do is we start off by reading the description for whatever streaming site it's on. And again, we said this is on Hulu, which is, again, this is awesome that Seinfeld, the whole series is on Hulu.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But here's what they've got for their description here. In the Emmy Award-winning Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld provides a hysterical look at life as a single adult in the 90s. That's pretty accurate.
It is. It really, I mean, with a show that's as iconic as Seinfeld, it really seems like an oversimplification, but I mean, it's accurate, I guess.
I would say so. And, you know, it's a show about nothing, but
yeah,
pretty much that is what it's about, though, being a single adult in the 90s, really in, like, the big city, too, you know, in New York. So, hey, let's what do we want to do? What do we want to start talking about?
Should we talk a little bit about the background of this show?
Yeah, let's do it. So
to get ready for this episode of our podcast, we watched a little documentary. What was that called? Oh,
that was called Seinfeld in the Beginning or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was on YouTube, and I think it's a special feature on the DVD. It's like an hour-long documentary.
Yeah, but you can find it on YouTube, and it's really interesting. We got a lot of good information from that.
Yeah, and so we'll get into that too in a second. Really what we do here, if this is your first time listening to, we talk about first episodes of TV shows, give a little bit of background about it, also break down the episode, go through it kind of point by point, and kind of relate it to our own lives too, because it's about you and me and also TV.
That's what the show is called.
That's what it's called.
What's the deal with podcast titles?
Okay. Well, actually, we got our podcast title because it comes from You, Me, and Dupree. And, of course, all our fans out there are Duprees.
Stop trying to make Duprees happen.
It's happening. It's happening. I'm doing it for the Duprees out there. So, let's talk a little bit about the background of Seinfeld. There was a lot of stuff when we were doing some research on this. I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
So, we mentioned when it premiered, July 5th, 1989. And if you know anything about like TV shows, that's not when shows usually come out. They don't come out on July 5th.
Typically they would come out in the fall.
They don't even air new episodes of things on July 5th. That's like the day after a holiday. Like that's not, it's the middle of the summer. Yeah. And I saw that because, that was just a couple weeks ago and they were talking about it's the 30th anniversary of Seinfeld. And I was like, that's so weird. Why would it come out then? But we found out that the pilot, when they aired it, was pretty much, they mentioned in that documentary, it was like, well, somebody, maybe, well, I guess that was when it got picked up later on where they said maybe somebody owed them a favor or something like that. But it was a sort of a one-off special.
Yeah. So Jerry Seinfeld was a comedian who had kind of gained some popularity because he appeared on Johnny Carson and he did well on that.
He did well. He got the okay sign.
Yeah, which I guess is
it's a big deal.
An important stamp of approval for comedians. You know what? They were talking about that, or Ellen DeGeneres was talking about that in her stand-up special on Netflix recently, how she was on Johnny Carson and got his approval, and that like made all the difference for her career. So that's like a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened for Jerry Seinfeld. And so because of that, he was asked to put together this like 90-minute special that was going to air in lieu of Saturday Night Live one night while they were like on vacation or whatever. So he worked together with his friend Larry David.
And Larry David was also a working comedian in Manhattan, in New York. And also, I think at this point, a writer. He had written briefly on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. And if you don't know him, he's the creator and the star of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's just a joy.
Although when I picture him, if you're familiar with Curb Your Enthusiasm, you know what he looks like. But if you do yourself a favor and look up what he looked like in the 80s or maybe the 70s, he looks wild.
Yeah. So Jerry and Larry together were going to create this 90-minute special for NBC that was basically, it was going to be called the Seinfeld Chronicles, and it was going to be about like a comedian going through his daily life and how that influences his act.
Yeah, because I think it was going to end with a little bit of some stand-up or something like that. Yeah. But yeah, they didn't want to just do a straight stand-up special.
Right.
Certainly not for 90 minutes.
Right.
But it would show how everything kind of came together, which is sort of like the Curb Your Enthusiasm special that came out before that aired, where it's all leading up to his big stand-up special and how that kind of came together. In a way, it's a little bit like that, although he doesn't actually do stand-up on that.
Yeah, we'll do Curb down the road, and we'll get into that more.
But it's kind of a cool idea for a special,
too.
Is. They don't end up doing that.
No, because they sat down to write that and kind of didn't feel like they had enough material to go for 90 minutes and felt like it would lend itself better to like a typical 30-minute sitcom
and in
format.
And in a way it still kind of follows that same structure too, where we see, if you're familiar with Seinfeld, the show, usually there's a stand-up sort of monologue in a way in the beginning that sets up the episode and loosely ties in with it.
Interspersed, they'll like cut back.
Well,
to
I think on the rest
throughout it.
On the pilot they do, but I think in general on the show they usually do it in the beginning and at the end sometimes. I don't think they do it through the middle. I don't know, maybe they do.
I feel like they do, but
you've watched it more than I have.
Yeah.
Actually, you've seen all the episodes.
I've seen every episode many times. This was like Seinfeld was very important to my upbringing. I feel like it was a show that my parents loved, my dad especially.
Yeah.
And like I think I talked about when we did our Full House episode, that was like appointment viewing for me. For my parents, it was Seinfeld. We had to be there to watch Seinfeld. And even though I was a really little kid, I would watch with them. And I'm really grateful to my parents that they like instilled this love for comedy and an understanding of like how a person should be funny.
Yeah.
At like an early age. So.
Well, I'm glad too, because I do a little comedy myself. So
yeah,
I'm glad that you find that appealing.
Yeah, I do.
This show too, it's kind of interesting to me because you mentioned you watched it when it was on and you've seen all the episodes. I've also seen all the episodes, but I did not watch this when it was on. Like I never watched it new. And I saw the episodes before streaming too, which means...
I mean, we were very little kids when this new, but I did watch it.
But so that means I also never sat down specifically to watch it in syndication. So that means that somehow I watched enough TBS that I saw every episode of Seinfeld, which is kind of crazy because in this day and age, that wouldn't happen as much.
Yeah.
You would, go out of your way to see every episode of something. This is just something I happen to have seen every episode of, which I think is kind of a cool, different kind of time period sort of thing, generational thing.
Right.
But anyway, that 30-minute special, the test audiences, when they showed it, how'd they feel about it, Gia?
They hated it. It did not do well with test audiences. But it did do well with critics when they aired it. And so one of the NBC executives, Rick Ludwin, based on all that critical praise they were getting for the show, became a really big advocate for the show, and he pretty much begged and convinced his superiors to order the show to series. They got a 4-episode order, so it was like that pilot that had already aired plus 4 episodes for a 5-episode season 1.
Yep.
Which at the time at least was the shortest ever order for a series. Like those 4 episodes was the shortest.
They mentioned that documentary too, that Jerry was like pretty confident. He was like, okay, this is gonna happen and we're good, but everybody else was like, what? 4 episodes? This is terrible.
Yeah, but Rick Ludwin does get a lot of credit. He also gave up part of his personal budget with NBC as part of this deal to get the show made.
Rick Ludwin.
Yeah.
You changed the course of history and television.
He did. Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. And he's in the documentary, right? All these guys are in the a lot of them are.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool to see all these people. The documentary is from like 2004, by the way.
Yeah, but it's very cool. It's very interesting. Yeah. So they did, after this pilot aired, order the show to series, but the network had one note that was like a condition that they like absolutely had to follow in order to get the show made, and that was they had to add a female character,
because in the pilot they have a female character, but it's just a waitress and it's not a big part.
But they wanted like a fourth like big character.
Who they cast?
They cast Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Elaine, which means she's not in this pilot episode, unfortunately.
Right. Unfortunately, she's not, although we talked about her a lot in our Veep episode, which you can listen to.
Her. She's great.
Yeah, that's our most listened to episode, by the way, Veep.
Oh, that makes sense. It's a really good show.
It's a great show. You mentioned, too, that they just had that one note, the network did, but they also did butt heads a lot with Larry David.
They did. The network did throughout this 4-episode order, and also just as the series went on, they butted heads a lot. And I think so Larry was like very stubborn and really fought for like the creative integrity of the show, whereas Jerry was more kind of
he was like happy to be there.
Yeah, he was happy to be there. He was kind of like a go with the flow kind of guy, kind of more of an agreeable person to work with. And I think that dynamic between the two of them is what kind of led to the success of
think so,
of Seinfeld, is like Larry like really fighting hard for what his vision of the show was, and then Jerry being the one who would like go into the meetings and actually deal with people. Because I think they said in that documentary Larry wasn't even allowed to be in the room for some of those meetings because he would be such a jerk about it.
Yeah, and I think after the pilot aired too, he was like just it's not that he didn't want anything to do with it anymore, the show, but I think they said that he just like didn't think anything was going to happen. It's over. It's done. I'm moving on. But if you've ever seen Curb Your Enthusiasm, it's based on his real life persona. So I would imagine he would get into lots of fights with people.
True to life. And if you are familiar with Seinfeld, you may or may not already know this, but Larry David was the inspiration for the George Costanza character on Seinfeld. So there's an arc to the season 4 of Seinfeld where Jerry and George are trying to get a sitcom made.
That's where the pilot episode comes in? Yes.
It's very meta.
Okay.
Yeah, and the way George behaves in some of those meetings is how Larry was behaving in real life.
Yeah, they talk about that in the documentary. So, so that's a little bit of background about how Seinfeld came together. But again, we do recommend you watch that on YouTube if you can find it. Seinfeld, How It Began or something like that.
Yeah, especially if you're a big fan of this show like we are. It was really interesting.
I think it just came up as a recommended clip on a recommended video on YouTube.
Yeah, good job, YouTube.
You know what? YouTube doesn't get enough credit. No, I'm just kidding. They're fine. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about this pilot episode.
All right, let's get into it. And as we've mentioned, we love the show Seinfeld. I don't love this pilot.
The pilot itself, well, it grew on me. I watched it 2 or 3 times to prep for the podcast.
It's bad.
It's different though. They made changes before they went in to do the actual show.
Yeah.
And
even Larry David has said he has a hard time watching this pilot.
Yeah, he doesn't really like it, and he wanted some other things I think to happen that didn't happen. But let's get into it. But just a side note too, if you're not watching Seinfeld, you've never seen Seinfeld, you need something to throw on as sort of background noise. It's on Hulu. Yeah. Get it. Check it out.
Yeah. Or if you're just a fan of it, you might not know it's on Hulu. I feel like people don't know.
It was real big when it came out on Hulu, when Hulu got the rights to it. And even on Hulu, they like categorized some of the episodes. They got all the ones with like David Puddy, Patrick Warburton's character. Yeah. They've got all the ones with like breakups. They've got a top 10 of Hulu favorites.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool with the different things on the menu there to look for. But so Do you want to read us the episode description for the pilot episode?
Yeah, this will set it up. So, Jerry and George argue whether an overnight visitor Jerry is expecting is coming with romantic intentions.
They mentioned on this documentary, too, about how what they wanted to focus on with this show was the gray areas of social interaction. And this is a gray area of social interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, we'll kind of see this as we go through the plot of the episode. But one of the things that makes Seinfeld great is that the focus was really on the comedy and the dialogue and they weren't really concerned with like
telling a lesson, giving a moral at the end of it,
a moral or like relationship development between any of the characters or even personal growth on the part of any of the characters, the way like a lot of shows are.
Right.
They really were just trying to be funny. And that was kind of groundbreaking, I think, at the time.
Yeah, Jason Alexander mentioned in that documentary that when he read the pilot script, he said it felt like a Woody Allen movie.
Yeah.
And that he actually kind of felt like he was doing a Woody Allen impression when he was doing the part of George.
Yeah.
Which, when you watch it back, you can kind of pick up on that when he's talking about
For sure.
signals and things like that.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that part. But let's start off with the opening, I guess the cold opening credits type of part. We got Jerry performing stand-up. Pretty familiar if you watch the show.
Yeah.
But it looks a little different here, and they kind of fade in and out with the opening credits.
Yeah.
And the bit that he's doing in the beginning, normally those bits kind of deal with the content of the episode, but this one doesn't end up tying in any sort of way.
No.
But it's kind of a funny bit talking about how we're all out right now, and that's what everybody wants to do.
Everybody was out at the comedy show, and we all want to go out.
Yeah, and we're all out right now. This is the thing we've all been aspiring to do. But what happens when you go out? You just gotta go back home. That delivery was not good, but the bit itself is not that great.
No, but it's like Jerry Seinfeld's like trademark observational humor, which another thing that I think makes him and Larry David work well together is like Jerry has these observations that he makes that are interesting, and then it seems like Larry David is maybe able to spin those into an interesting story.
Yeah, I think so too.
Interesting dialogue.
Because we watched Jerry Seinfeld's stand-up special on Netflix. It's new, like it came out like last year, or the year before, and we actually didn't watch much of it because the whole like first 15 minutes were like, you get into a car, but you get onto the train. What's going on with that? And it was like, that's just how language works, man. I like Jerry Seinfeld, and I've watched some of his stand-up that I enjoyed a lot, but I just couldn't get through that special.
Yeah, I think the partnership between the two of them is what really makes Seinfeld as great as it is.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Although we have been, not to criticize Jerry Seinfeld's stand-up, and we have been watching some of his comedians in cars getting coffee, which I originally didn't really like that show that much, but we just threw on the new season where we had Ricky Gervais on.
Yeah, I think it's fun. The reason we don't like it that much is too much focus on cars.
Focus on cars.
We don't care.
I don't care about these cars.
I care about the comedians, not so much about the cars. Sorry.
A little bit about the coffee.
Little bit.
So anyway, he does that whole bit right there about going out, and we see the title cards going on and stuff like that. We hear that trademark music.
Yeah, that background music that I'm sure you're familiar with that has like that beatboxing in it. And that's,
is it beatboxing?
Yes, it is. The composer, Jonathan Wolf.
And it's on a synthesizer.
He recorded all the beatboxing sounds and also like all the other sounds on a synthesizer.
Is that what beatboxing means?
Yeah, and
what do you think beatboxing means?
Like he's making the sounds
with his mouth?
With his mouth.
He's going bow, ba-dow, ba-dow.
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I assumed it was a bass guitar.
No, because I had heard it before, and I looked it up to verify when I was doing the notes.
But then the other part, that's a synthesizer, right?
Yes. So all of the sounds, like the beatboxing and all the other sounds, he recorded all of that into a synthesizer. Okay. So what he's actually playing is a synthesizer through
of his voice.
Some of it is of his voice, and some of it is of like other sounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that. You're learning stuff here on You, Me, and TV.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So next time your friend pulls out his bass guitar, not your friend, just the listener's friend pulls out his bass guitar and starts playing the Seinfeld theme,
there's not
say
a bass
no,
guitar.
it's all beatboxing. So put that away. Nobody wants to hear you doing the Seinfeld theme on your bass guitar. Oh my gosh. Bass players always do that.
Yeah.
I used to play in a band in high school, and actually I don't think our bass player ever did that, but
you guys did have a fog machine. So
look, we had a fog machine when I was playing a show one time. It was very exciting. But that's a story for another day.
So yeah, Jerry's doing a stand-up. We're hearing that beatboxing music.
One thing I thought too about his stand-up in there when he's like, "This is out. This is what we're all doing. It's so fun." I was trying to think of other circumstances where we've been out like that, because that's kind of it is a fun observational thing. I was thinking, I feel like I must have seen this pilot not too long ago before this, because I remember we went out this year. You were really wanting to go out for New Year's, and we didn't go out for New Year's, but we went out for Valentine's Day to Franklin Park Conservatory here in Columbus.
Yeah.
It was super fancy.
Yeah, it was.
Wines, chocolates. They had one of those things where a woman is suspended from the ceiling by like curtains. Scarf curtain things.
Yeah.
Like twirling around and stuff like that. It was a big fancy, they have weddings there and stuff like that too, and everybody's like dressed in suits. And I remember thinking when I was there, I was like, we're all doing the thing right now that everybody wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
Here we are, and we're out.
Yeah.
It was very exciting.
Yeah, it was.
That's what it reminded me of when he's talking about stuff like that. So, I don't know.
Spot on.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the opening scene after the title cards and everything.
So now we're at Pete's Luncheonette, which, if you're familiar with Seinfeld at all, where they normally hang out and eat, is Monk's Cafe. But in this pilot, it looks a little different, and it's called Pete's Luncheonette.
And the Monk's Cafe, what it says on the outside is restaurant, but not here, not in the first episode.
Yeah, and it's kind of like iconic. That shot of the restaurant in Seinfeld.
And we've been there.
We've been there in real life, to the place where they shot those exterior scenes. Yeah, it's in real life. It's called Tom's Restaurant.
And it's like a Greek diner?
Yeah, it's a Greek diner.
It seemed like all of the diners in New York, when you were there briefly, were Greek.
Yeah, and it seems like that's not just a New York thing. We've got like a Greek diner in town here in Delaware, Ohio, too. So I guess that's a thing. But another interesting thing about that restaurant where those exterior shots are filmed, Tom's Restaurant, is it was also the inspiration for the Suzanne Vega song "Tom's Diner."
I'm not familiar with that song.
I'm sure that you know that song. It's the one that goes do 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 do. It kind of sounds like the "I Dream of Jeannie" theme song.
I'm familiar with "I Dream of Jeannie."
And she's
I know
just
the song
like,
now that you say it.
She's just like kind of talking about like the people around her. It's like, I am sitting shooby dooby dooby dooby, and there's a man drinking coffee or something.
Seinfeld does observational comedy.
Yeah, so that's kind of a weird coincidence. It is a coincidence that song came out before Seinfeld.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Well, they could have chosen that specifically. Somebody back there, I mean, let's not give the production designers and whatnot, let's not sell them short. They might have said,
were big Suzanne
they
Vegas
said, we don't
fans.
like this opening that says, what does it say? Pete's Luncheonette or something like that. We're gonna change it. This says restaurant. It'll be iconic on that. And also, I don't want to get too deep here, but there's a song set here that is really about, in a way, the same kind of comedy that you've done.
Yeah, it's true.
And then Larry just staring at him like, what?
Who is this guy?
Do whatever you want. I don't.
Yeah. So anyway, Jerry and George are sitting there kind of talking over lunch, and they're talking about nothing important, which is...
I'm going to stop you right there. They're talking about something very important.
Okay.
So what we got here is George has a purple dress shirt on. It's a casual dress shirt, but it's a dress shirt. And Jerry is, doing his observational kind of, bits in a way. But the second button. So when you wear a men's dress shirt, Gia, if you're wearing a tie, you button it all the way up.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you are not wearing a tie, you undo that top button. And Jerry's pointing out that second button is just up too high. So it's still up very high. And I think he says, you look like you live with your mother. It's a very important thing. And he says, didn't you try it on beforehand? And George is like, no, it's purple. I liked it. So I got it. I didn't think about it. This is an issue. You got to try your clothes on beforehand. The button is too high. That's a big issue. Now, my issue, sometimes the buttons are, if they're too high, I got to undo two buttons, and then I look like I'm trying to show off the chest. Sometimes I am.
Well, I think this is not just a men's issue. Have you ever tried to put on a button down, like a work shirt as a woman.
As a woman?
Have you done that?
I have not as a woman.
It's even more of an issue when you have breasts and the way that the buttons sit on your body. It becomes a bigger issue, I think, for women. So
okay,
you don't get to have that.
Wow. Yeah. So, either way, so you agree with me. It's a very important point.
I would say it's a somewhat important point, but it's very much right from the start. We're getting, this is a show about nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, what do we see after that? The waitress comes in, and this waitress was going to be a main character on the show.
Yeah. The waitress named Claire, who's played by an actress named Lee Garrington. Now, in the opening credits that we were seeing while Jerry was doing that stand-up routine at the beginning,
she gets her own
title card, Lee Garrington. So they were planning on having her as kind of a big part in the show.
Side note about Lee Garrington, though, I did look her up on IMDb, and she's, been in a lot of things.
Yeah. So don't feel too bad for her, but she does get written out of the show after this, in part because they brought in Elaine, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, in like a different and a bigger role, and they didn't really need her and didn't really want to be tied to a character in a restaurant necessarily.
Right.
But also in part because she had done some unsolicited rewrites to the script that she brought to Larry David, and he was not pleased.
Didn't like it.
He doesn't like anybody messing with his writing. So that didn't work out too well for Lee. But anyway, the waitress Claire comes up and is refilling George's coffee. He's concerned that she's giving him the caffeinated coffee because there's no little orange indicator on the pot to indicate which one is decaf. She says she's doing it. She can tell the difference in her head. But he's stressed out. Very stressed out.
Which is a good way to show right there in the first minute or so after the opening that George is a little bit neurotic.
Yeah, riddled with anxiety. So you can kind of understand why Jason Alexander reading the script was thinking Woody Allen.
Yeah, I think so.
That neuroses is there. Yeah.
And then we get into sort of, I guess, some of the plot of the episode. Jerry talks to George, and he says he got a call from Laura, which is a girl he met in Michigan while he was performing. Because again, he's playing himself as a stand-up comedian who does travel the country.
Right.
And she's coming into town. And they're talking about, George is like, what? Who's this girl? Who are you talking about? And, Jerry says that, he likes her. But they just had, met. They kind of, we assume that they hung out a little bit when they met.
Yeah, but he's talking about how great the conversation was with her. And he says, talking with her was like talking to you, but obviously much better.
That's sweet. I think that's
nice.
Because, that's what you want. You want a best friend. I feel like talking to you is like talking to good friend Anthony.
Oh, but much better?
But much better. Sorry,
Anthony.
But it is like that, though. When you find someone you really care for and you love, it's like you can just joke around with them.
Right.
That's what I do with my friends.
And that line almost makes it sound like Jerry is describing Elaine, his relationship with Elaine, who's not in this episode.
Right.
But he's not. So anyway, George is very excited for Jerry at first that this woman is coming into town.
But Jerry explains sort of the more detailed the situations, and he says she called this morning and said she had to come in for a seminar and maybe we'd get together.
George doesn't like the sound of that.
There's too many modifiers there.
Yeah, he's like, she had to come into town and maybe you'll get together. Had to and maybe. So George does not think that this woman is planning to see Jerry at all. They
say, why bother even calling? And Jerry says, maybe she was trying to be polite. And George says he's a backup. And they really analyze all of that. When we were watching it, my opinion, it did kind of sound like, she's got to come into town. Maybe they'll get together. It did seem like just a friendly... Hey, I'm going to be, if you've never been to New York and you know someone in New York, it's like, hey, I'm coming through town. Like, she might not even have a grasp of how big it is. You know what I mean? Like, it might be like, hey, I'll be in town. Maybe we can meet up.
I guess. I don't know. I feel like this is like before social media, obviously. So there's no way that Jerry is going to know that she's in town other than her having told him. So why would she even bother calling and telling him unless she was planning on seeing him?
I guess. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't know. Because I know like a few people that live in Chicago. I mean, they're all like guys. It's not like girls that I'm like, hey, I'm in town, you know, whatever.
I hope not.
But I do remember when we went to Chicago one time on vacation, I remember like being like, hey, I'm going to be around like in Chicago. Maybe we can meet up.
But we did meet up with those people. We were planning on meeting up with them, and we did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I also remember when we went to Chicago, we were like going there with family, and I didn't think we would have time to do a whole lot. So I didn't tell my friend who lives there that we were coming. And then we ended up running into her like when we went to get coffee. Do you remember that? And then I felt so bad for not telling her that we were coming. Which friend? My friend Lindsay.
Oh, I thought we told them. We went to brunch with them.
Well, that was after we ran into them.
Oh, I do remember just running into them.
And I felt like such a jerk, but like I didn't think we were going to have time to hang out, but we did, and we saw them. Wow. And I'm sorry that we didn't tell you we were coming. We are glad we ran into you and that we got to hang out.
Sorry, Lindsay and Matt.
Yeah. We did not mean to be jerks.
We didn't mean to be jerks. I hope you listen to the podcast. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be fun.
What if you never listened to it? What if this was a year or two later and you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, they were talking about me on this podcast? Well, anyway.
Anyway, so the next scene, Jerry and George are at the laundromat. Jerry's clothes are in the dryer. And Jerry and George are still debating what Laura... that's the girl's name, what she meant when she called Jerry.
One thing before you get to that too is Jerry says, you know, to George when they're still in the diner, he says, you know, I got to go take my laundry out, put in the dryer, and, you know, come with me or whatever. And George is like, I'm not going to watch you do laundry. And Jerry's like, come on, be a come with guy. I like that idea. Yeah. I would say I'm not a come with guy. I've always got my own stuff to do. If I'm being a come with guy with you, I really want to spend some time with you because normally I get my own.
I feel like in college I was like a come with guy, but not so much now.
Well,
got like a baby and stuff.
That's true.
Yeah.
I never was. I was always a go alone. I would go to the dining hall by myself at like 4:30 and be like, I'm hungry, guys. I'm not waiting around for you. But anyway, yeah, back to as they're analyzing stuff while the laundry is going on. There's kind of a famous or an iconic George moment in there where he's talking about the signals and he's like, it's signals, Jerry, it's signals. Yeah, and he's like snapping his fingers.
Yeah.
That seemed like a Woody Allen kind of vibe to me there.
It did.
Signals, you got to know the signals.
Yeah, and this is where George is kind of like acting like he's like a relationship expert throughout this episode. We'll see that George is not great with relationships. None of these characters on Seinfeld are.
No.
But he thinks he's an expert here. And they talk about how Jerry doesn't even know where Laura's staying, so he can't contact her. He just has to wait for her to call.
What a different time.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And also while they're at the laundromat, Jerry and George are just kind of debating whether or not you can over dry your laundry.
And Jerry does sort of a comedy bit there where he's talking about how it's the same reason you can't over wet your laundry. Once it's wet, it's wet. And then he does this whole bit about like if I killed you, if you died right now and I shot you, it wouldn't kill you even more. And then it goes, you can't over die, you can't over dry.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun little line there.
Is, yeah.
Although I don't think that's entirely accurate. You leave stuff in that dryer for too long and it gets too hot, that's not good.
Also, if you shoot somebody like a whole bunch of times and you kill them, it's not going to look good for you in court. I listen to a lot of true crime stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or if somebody's dead and you shoot their dead body, you can't do that.
As far as
legally, you're not supposed to be doing that.
No, as far as like sentencing goes, you just shoot them one time, guys.
Wow. We just watched the finale of Big Little Lies. I don't want to give anything away, but had they shot that body after it was dead? I don't want to give specifics. It'd be a very different situation. And they would all be going to prison.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah, so I say you can overdye. And you can overdry. You could set your clothes on fire.
I always take mine out a little bit early so they don't shrink.
Yeah.
So
anyway. I don't agree with Jerry on this point.
And then we get a little stand-up interlude about laundry.
Yeah, so this does kind of tie in.
Yeah, it does.
To the last scene.
It's a little bit of the weaker of the stand-up interludes because he's like,
I thought it was kind of cute.
Laundry day is like it's the exciting day for the laundry. It's like the nightclub for all the laundry. You got the socks over here and they're dancing with the t-shirts. I could do without those jokes. That was so dumb. And then talking about how socks disappear and things like that. I feel like there was at least one. Oh, the part about the blood. That part was funny where he goes, I've seen this laundry commercial lately where they're showing that you can get blood stains out. Is this a violent image to any of you? I feel like you've got blood stains. You got bigger concerns.
Problems than laundry.
Maybe remove the harpoon from your chest or something like that.
Yeah. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it builds,
So anyway, the next scene, we're at Jerry's apartment. It's very late at night. I think it's like 1 a.m. or something.
Because he's a working comedian. It's like after his set.
Right. So Jerry's alone in his apartment. He's like eating a bowl of cereal, which is kind of like a trademark Jerry Seinfeld move. He still has cereal. But he looks ridiculous right now. Can we talk about his outfit in this scene? He's wearing like bright red pants and like a blue sweatshirt. It's ridiculous.
Well, he's lounging after a day at work.
That's true.
For one.
Okay.
I mean, you've been known to lounge.
Wearing that outfit?
No, but if you were a big fan of Superman, which Jerry is, then you might wear in bright
Superman
red and
colors.
Yeah.
Although his love for Superman doesn't come up in this pilot.
Doesn't it though?
I guess you have to read between the lines and look at his outfit.
Yeah.
All right.
But he has taped the Mets game, and he's watching
baseball,
it.
Right? Mets. Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets.
What is the
Step
song?
right up and greet the Mets.
Is that a song?
It's a song. It's
yes.
baseball.
It is baseball.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And
but there's also the Yankees. They have two. It's confusing.
They got two teams.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
Are they in different leagues? American League and what's the other one?
And the National League?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still confusing.
It is.
Okay, so he's a Mets fan.
He is, and but he recorded it, and so he's watching it now after he gets off the job. So
yeah, so Jerry gets a phone call, and the way he picks up the phone and answers it, he says, "If you know what happened in the Mets games, don't say anything. I taped it. Hello." So it turns out it was a wrong number anyway. But so Jerry's been trying to avoid spoilers all night. He says he hasn't had any interaction with any humans up to this point because he wanted to see how this game played out. But then his neighbor knocks on the door and comes in. Turns out it's his neighbor across the hall, Kramer. But in this episode, he's called Kessler. Oh, interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about
talk a little bit about that. They talked about in this documentary we watched, and basically Kramer is based on a neighbor that Larry David used to have
in real life,
and his name is Kramer, his last name or whatever. And Larry David didn't want to use the name Kramer because he was basing it off of this guy.
Yeah, and the guy had told him, "You can call the character Kramer, but then I get to play Kramer." And he was like, "No, you're not."
And Larry was like, "You're not playing Kramer."
Yeah.
And he knew if they used the name Kramer that this guy was gonna just want to be so involved.
Yeah, and insert himself into everything.
And
which again, they kind of use that plot later on in season 4 when Jerry and George were writing their own series. Yeah.
And so they went with Kessler in this pilot. But everybody else just wanted the name Kramer.
Yeah, they were like, "There's something about that name. We've got to have the name Kramer."
And Larry, he agreed to it, and he's like, "This guy's going to be..."
They ended up giving into like a lot of this guy's demands.
Yeah, he had a ton of demands.
Not the one that he cast on the show, but lots of other demands.
And it did appear too, based on the documentary, that the guy has some kind of Kramer bus tour in New York or something like that, which is probably part
Kramer
of
does on
on
Seinfeld.
Which that was probably part of his demands
reality
too.
Tour or something. Yeah, which is hilarious. But so anyway, in this episode, he's called Kessler, but he's played by Michael Richards, the Kramer we're familiar with. So Kessler, in kind of a not so Kramer move, knocks on the door and then comes in when Jerry
he also has a dog, I think, that we'll see later, that I don't think Kramer has a dog.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, so he knocks and he comes in, but it is like 1 a.m. or something like that. It's the middle of the night.
And when he comes in, he says, "Boy, the Mets blew it tonight, huh?" And ruining the game.
Yeah, so Jerry's really disappointed about that. Also, I'm going to call him Kramer, I think, for the rest of this, even though he's Kessler in this episode, but we'll go with Kramer. He's there to get some meat for his sandwich. He brought his own bread, and he asked Jerry if he has any meat.
Got any meat?
Yeah.
Which I feel like I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I'm not sure, but I probably told you that in high school, I just have this vivid memory of this kid named Henry that had meat in his pockets, just loose. Ew. And I remember, like, at lunch one day, he's just like, "You guys want any meat?" And I thought it was the funniest thing.
Is it creepier to ask somebody for meat or to offer people meat?
I think it's creepier to offer your meat unsolicited.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is. What's that guy doing these days?
You know what? I am not Facebook friends with him. So I do not know.
He's a dead to you now.
No. Not. He was a nice guy. I sat at the lunch table with him.
All right. All right. So Kramer's there to get meat. Jerry lets him forage around his apartment for some meat, his kitchen. And Kramer is saying that he almost went to that Mets game that night. And Jerry's like, "You haven't been out of the building in 10 years, which is kind of weird because we see Kramer seen Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Kramer leaves the building all the time. We see that in many episodes.
Yeah, so. I guess it seems like the idea there was that they've got a quirky neighbor that has never left, and he's always there, potentially able to come in. But yeah, he does leave throughout the series.
Yeah.
And he also says in there, what does he say? They start talking about
Kramer says, "I thought I wasn't allowed to be in here this weekend." And Jerry's like, "No, it's okay because that girl's not coming." Which
he's convinced she's not coming now that he doesn't even know where her hotel is. Yeah.
And Kramer's like, "You want me to talk to her?" Like thinking he can persuade her somehow.
And as he's trying that, she actually calls.
Yeah, which is weird because given the time of day.
It's late at night. I think she points that out though. She does.
Yeah.
And we find out that she needs to be picked up from the airport, and that she wants to stay at Jerry's place.
Yeah, so those are two pretty big favors that make it sound like she's definitely planning on spending some quality time with Jerry when she gets here,
at this point it sounds, we mentioned before we had friends in Chicago when we went to Chicago. If we had called those friends up, they wouldn't think that we want to sleep with them like Jerry does.
We were a married couple going there together at the time.
A weird situation. But they would think that they're like hosting us.
Yeah.
Like they would need to entertain us. Maybe we might go out on our own, but we're going to be there and they're going to entertain us.
Yeah.
In a certain way.
Which kind of seems like that would have been a very rude thing to
that would be very imposing.
The night before.
We would have to sleep with them if we did that.
That would be the only decent thing. Just kidding.
Joking around.
# me too.
I don't think that. Well, okay.
Yeah. But Jerry is like, I'll definitely pick you up. You can stay here, no problem. But now he's thinking things are going to be happening with this woman, probably.
Yeah.
So then we cut to the next day at Jerry's apartment, and Jerry and George are carrying like a mattress into the apartment.
This part's a little confusing. He's bringing in another bed, but it's like, did he buy another bed?
Yeah,
is he just bringing in a mattress?
His parents' place? I'm not sure.
It's a little unclear. But sometimes in pilots they cut stuff out too, so who knows?
That's true. Yeah. So they're bringing this mattress in for Laura to sleep on.
Yeah, which is weird. In general, she could just sleep in his bed if he wants to be like a gentleman or whatever.
Yeah,
he could sleep on the couch.
He's got a couch.
Yeah. But George has what I feel like is maybe the best line of the episode. I think it's a really good line.
It's a good line. It's a douchey line though.
Yeah, but it's funny though.
Yeah.
And he says, "I can't believe you're bringing in an extra bed for a woman that wants to sleep with you. Why don't you bring in an extra guy too?" He delivers it better than I did. But it's very funny.
Yeah, it is. But Jerry doesn't want to be presumptuous, which I think speaks well to his character. He doesn't, think this woman like owes him sex for staying with him.
Right. So
that part kind of holds up in the Me Too era.
And I think it's true too. I mean, it is a little over the top to bring in an extra bed or whatever when he could just sleep on the couch or she could just sleep on the couch.
Yeah, you can kind of see how things go and then.
Yeah.
But
I think that's the right mentality,
that he's
though.
not like expecting like she has to sleep with him. Although I don't think George is wrong that it sounds like she's probably planning to. I mean, sounds like it's going to go that way.
It does sound like that. She said she couldn't find a good hotel in New York, and I think George does point out at one point that there's like tons of hotels.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah, although no Airbnbs.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah.
What else here?
That's when Kramer comes in with his dog.
Okay,
the
yeah,
dog that I don't think we ever see again. That like jumps on George and Kramer notices the mattress and he's like, "Is this for that girl? Why even give her an option?" So he's like,
okay, now that's not a good thing. Why even give her an option?
Yeah, that reminds me of on Always Sunny when Dennis has the boat and he's like because of the implications thing.
Yeah, no, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
When Dennis has a boat, he says that. Yeah.
They like bring girls back to the boat and say they are gonna have to sleep with him because of the implication.
They never explain that, but they could murder them by throwing them off the boat.
Yeah, that's the implication.
Yeah. Why even give them an option?
Yeah. So this line reminded me of that. So not a great.
Come on, Kramer. Well, at least that's the worst thing that Michael Richards or Kramer will ever say.
All right. Okay. So anyway, another thing we see in this scene is Jerry and George are about to leave because Jerry's going to go perform a set, so they got to go. But Jerry's worried that he hasn't cleaned the bathroom yet, and George is like, "No, filth is good," because like a rock star wouldn't bother to clean the bathroom.
George really sounds like he knows what he's talking about, like he's an expert here.
He talks like he's an expert.
And now when he does say that, I would always... Well, actually, I guess when we met in college, my place wasn't super clean.
Your
but
bathroom is disgusting. Your kitchen was disgusting. Your bedroom was very clean and neat.
My bedroom was clean. It was my
the rest
roommate's
of the apartment
side of the...
was afraid to set foot in.
My roommate's side of the sink was dirty.
That's not a thing. If the sink is dirty, the sink is dirty.
But
I refuse to eat anything at your apartment.
Well, but I would make things clean. Like I wouldn't intentionally have that filth. I don't think.
No, you're like, I don't think we've mentioned this, but Jerry's character is kind of like a neat freak. And you're kind of like that.
Yeah, I'm like that as well.
But yeah, your bathroom and your kitchen in college did not reflect that.
But what do you think as a woman? Is this something you would notice and think about? Would it be like if the men's if the guy's bathroom was like super clean and nice, would you be like, okay, this is good, or would you even notice it?
I would definitely notice. I would for sure notice if it was super gross.
Well, mine was gross, and you still married me, so.
It was in spite of your bathroom, not because of your bathroom.
Aww.
Yeah, so I would definitely notice like if somebody's place was gross. Another thing I would notice is if they were like a dangerous driver.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Those were like two big things for me where it was like, oh, I can't get past that. Yeah. But you scored points in that, like your room, which was like the area that you were in charge of,
right, was
spotless.
It
was very clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Then we get another stand-up interlude here. Jerry talks about dating.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about getting his he talks about getting his bathroom ready.
Yeah. So
he has this whole bit about cotton balls and how women are always using cotton balls. I've never had a use for a cotton ball. Never bought a cotton ball. Okay, I'm gonna take a guess here because I don't know. But when he's talking about it, it seems obvious that they're like to I think they're to remove makeup, right?
Mm-hmm. Remove makeup and nail polish.
Okay, yeah.
I would most often use them to.
Seemed obvious.
Yeah.
Jerry, come on. You don't keep cotton balls in our home.
I don't
in our
wear
residence.
A lot of nail polish, so.
Oh, okay, yeah. What do you take the makeup off with? You just wash it?
Just wash it.
Huh.
Just wash my face.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
But he also has a line in there. He talks about dates. A date is like a job interview that lasts all night. The only difference is there's not many job interviews where there's a chance you'll end up naked at the end of it.
Yeah, I thought
he does a whole little bit with that. That's a fun little
line.
bit. Yeah.
And I feel like that's accurate. I always felt like nervous on first dates, and I did feel like similar to like how I would feel in a job interview.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I felt that. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I was nervous on our first date.
Yeah.
Well, our first date, I mean, this is where these gray areas of social interaction come in, and how I probably a little bit like Jerry in that I was like unsure of how to act, because the first time we met, we kissed. We kissed. But then our first date, like when you dropped me off, because I think you drove because your apartment was further away.
Yeah.
I gave you just a very little peck on the cheek, maybe.
Yeah, and I didn't think you liked me.
I was so awkward. I mean, it was one we were like, I don't think you parked, so we were just like right outside of my place, and then like I was nervous. I didn't know what to do. And I'd kissed you before.
Right.
So, there are those gray areas in dating.
Was a little awkward.
It was, yeah. But hey, it worked out. So that's good.
Yeah.
But okay, next scene. We're at the airport.
Yeah, and Jerry brought George with him to pick up Laura, so they're waiting for her plane to arrive. And so George is telling Jerry he'll be able to tell if Laura is like into him and planning on sleeping with him based on the greeting that she gives him.
I think that's accurate.
I think that's a good thought. Yeah. So
and he says anything in the lip area is good. A hug is definitely good, unless it's one of those hugs where your hips are out real far and you're just in.
Right. So they're talking about how to read the signals, which that makes
signals.
Sense. Yeah. But then Laura, her plane arrives and she comes up behind Jerry and puts her hands over his eyes and she's like, guess who? And then she like grabs both of his hands and kind of like shakes them excitedly.
Yeah.
And like Jerry's like looking to George, and it's clear that neither one of them knows how to interpret this greeting. Like,
I would not know how to interpret that either.
Signs. Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to talk for a minute when we see Laura about how she looks. Now, I don't want to talk about like the actress's appearance.
She's beautiful.
Sure. Honestly,
they're all equally similar looking.
What I'm going to say is it's hard to even tell what this woman looks like because you're so distracted by her very dated hair and clothes.
It does not look like anything anybody who's under the age of 70 would wear.
Yeah, or would find attractive.
It's just so weird.
Yeah, so she's got like this super short haircut, which I had a similar haircut when I was in like first grade.
Oh yeah?
And
around the same time period. Well, sort of, a little later.
Yeah. I cried and cried when I got that haircut.
Aww.
It was hideous. Fortunately, I wasn't the only one. Like, that was kind of the style then. A lot of people had that haircut. I can't think of anyone that looks good on it. Certainly didn't look good on me. I don't think it looks good on this woman, Laura. Sorry. But also, in addition to that haircut, you virtually can't see any skin below her neck. She's got this floor length, like blue floral skirt and like this pink blouse, like long sleeved blouse that's like buttoned all the way up to the neck, and then she's got like a beige vest over that. It's all like kind of baggy.
It's a little shiny too, I think.
Kind of shiny. It's definitely not like you would see this person and be like, whoa, that girl's really hot.
Can I tell you my theory? Okay. We were talking earlier about how the people who, the art designers, production designers, whatever, when they came up with the restaurant and how that they wanted to do that because the reference to that song and how it's a show about observations and it'll be very deep.
Yep,
so
they
my
definitely
theory,
did that.
Of course they did. We got to give them the credit. These people work hard. They said, how are we going to dress this woman here coming in? This is sort of our big reveal here. What's she going to look like? Is it going to be, is she going to be beautiful? Is it going to be a knockout? Whatever. And they said, what we'll do is we'll cover her from head to toe because the whole premise of the episode is that women are an enigma in a way.
That's true.
And by covering her completely, we have shown symbolically that women are a mystery.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
I'm just kidding. That's stupid. No, of course they didn't do that. I don't know. It's the 80s. They look stupid.
I would say if we're like trying to read signals here, the signal that she's giving with this outfit is that she is not planning on sleeping with Jerry or with anyone ever.
Right. Yeah. No. Although if this were, we were both English majors, if this were a book and it was like that, you could write, that could be an essay. That could be a whole,
for sure.
So technically, if you were to break it down, what's that called in English when you do a close reading or whatever? You look directly at the text. Every detail's important. I don't really think that. I think they're just stupid clothing, but
Yeah, I think that was just like the time, and it was unfortunate.
Right. And so the next part here, we've got back at Jerry's apartment.
Yeah, back at Jerry's apartment. He's like showing Laura around his apartment. Tells her to make herself at home. So then let's look at some of the signals Laura's giving him.
Some of those signals. So, before we see the signals too, I was just thinking, I really want to know what their little day in Michigan was like, because they mentioned that he met her when he was like touring, and he went through Michigan, and
that she's like.
Sounds like she's a professor or something.
Like that.
Because it's like they must have had a really nice like day together. I mean, they must have spent more than just a little bit of time together.
Do you think it was like what's that Ethan Hawke movie?
I was just thinking that.
Before
sunrise, before sunset. There's a whole series of them. That's what it seemed like to me, because I don't even. They might sleep together at the end of that. I can't remember. But they stay all night too. But even before they do, it's a beautiful day that they spend together.
Talking.
Yeah. Is it like something like that? I would like to see that.
You want to see a Seinfeld prequel?
I want to see a Seinfeld prequel that is a romantic comedy. Well, not even a romantic comedy, just a romance. With Jerry and what's her name? Laura? That's what I want to see.
Who would be playing those characters?
Jerry Seinfeld.
Even now?
We'll put makeup on him. We'll do the face app.
That's okay. That'll look good.
Reverse it, though.
Well, then you're giving data to the Russians.
I don't pay attention to any of that. But it does sound... that's interesting. I would like to see a romance movie. Yeah. We'll write it.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so the signals that Laura's giving off in this scene. So
she's sitting on the couch and she unbuttons the top button on her blouse.
Yeah, and she's like kind of like got her legs folded up under her on the couch, kept really making herself comfortable. She asks Jerry if she can dim the lights.
Oh yeah.
Jerry asks her if he can get her anything, and she asks if he has any wine, which is the sexiest beverage. I think we can all agree, right? I
certainly agree.
Yeah. And she asks Jerry if she can stay the next night too.
Whoa, 2 nights.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, definitely. And so they kind of make plans that they're going to spend the next day together after she's got like a seminar thing she's going to in the morning, but after that. And Jerry asks what she wants to do, and she says, I know this sounds touristy, but I just love to go on one of those 5-hour boat rides around the city. And we can kind of tell that sounds just terrible to Jerry, who's like a native New Yorker. He has no interest in doing that touristy activity, but he's like going along with it because now he's thinking like things are going to be happening with Laura. He thinks he's going to get to sleep with her. He thinks,
because of the implication while they're on the boat.
Right, exactly. Right. So yeah, he agrees to that. And then there's a phone call, and it's for Laura. And Jerry kind of is listening in on her side of the conversation. And then she gets off the phone. What'd she say?
Never get engaged. And then Jerry says, you're engaged?
Yeah.
And then she keeps talking about what it's like being engaged or whatever. And he goes, you're engaged? And then she says something else and he goes, you're engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was tough for Jerry. He's not happy about that. I don't know if that reminded you at all, but it really reminded me of this time that we went to your high school reunion.
My 10-year high school reunion. Yeah. And one of my good friends, I won't say his name, he was chatting up a lady.
Divorced.
He was recently divorced. He went with
us to this reunion.
He was talking to somebody that we went to high school with that we didn't really talk to, I don't think, much in high school. And she was looking very pretty. And they
were talking for like a while. Like having a nice conversation.
And then and he wasn't even talking to us during this whole. He was just but he was sitting next to us.
Yeah.
And she was sitting on the other side of him.
And then at one point she like casually mentions a boyfriend. She's like, "Oh, my boyfriend, blah blah blah."
And then he just mid-conversation turns back toward us and just starts talking to us.
Never looks at her again the rest of the night.
We looked over, we saw her face was just kind of like,
what just happened? Where did that Yeah, he just like completely like disregarded her at that point.
She just disappeared at that point.
So Jerry wasn't quite that bad. He at least was still talking to this woman.
Right.
But yeah, It was similar. It wasn't great.
Oh, man. Look, ladies, if you're engaged or anything like that, you have to tell every man you meet as soon as you see them.
Well, you make it Facebook official, so they know.
That's true.
They know. You put it out there. But they didn't have that luxury back in 1989.
No,
so.
they did not.
Sorry, Jerry. And so then after she's talking about her engagement and going on about that guy, she's like, I can't wait to get on that boat. And poor Jerry, he's like, me too. And you can tell he does not really feel that way. He is not excited to get on the boat.
No,
given the lack of implication.
Right. And then we end the episode with another stand-up interlude there. And he talks about, it's a lot about how he has no idea what women are thinking. And
because they're very subtle.
Yeah, but men are more obvious. Like
you were talking about earlier. Yeah. And it really kind of ties into the whole theme of the episode, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, well, he talks a little bit about how men like honk their horns.
Oh,
he has a bit
true.
about how they honk their horns at girls. Like, what's their end game there?
Yeah.
Like, you're in the car.
Yeah,
which is true. Yeah.
But he's saying they're like they're out of ideas
out of ideas.
How to meet a woman. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the end of the episode there.
That's it.
That's the pilot episode of Seinfeld. And, it is weird because it's a little bit different, but we went back and we watched it several times. I kind of like it. It's kind of fun.
Yeah,
it's kind of nice.
Bad.
It's disappointing that Elaine's not in it.
No, because she really does add. I watched this other documentary where they were talking about adding her character in, and they said that she added, I think, luster is what Larry David said. She added luster to the show, and I think that's true.
And she knew Larry David because she was on SNL like briefly with him. And she she was interviewed on Dax Shepard's podcast, Armchair Expert, and I guess she was going to be on like a spinoff of, I don't know if it was Family Ties or it was something like that, and she had sort of committed to that when the Seinfeld job came up, and then she had to like break that off and then go with Seinfeld. It was kind of a whole big thing there. That interview is very interesting. I like Julia Louis-Dreyfus a lot. She's going to be in a movie with Will Ferrell in the future here, which I don't know if there's been any trailers or anything like that, but it sounded it sounded really good. And when she's in a movie, I mean, she had that one with James Gandolfini. What was that movie called?
Enough Said.
That's a good movie. I liked it a lot.
Enough Said was the name of the movie.
I thought you were telling me to just shut up and tell my opinion on the movie and move on. I was like, wow. That's rude. That's mean.
But yeah, you really miss her presence in this episode, but it's not a bad episode. It's still enjoyable.
Right.
And it only goes up from here.
Well, until the finale.
Right. Yeah.
Finale is not good. But in that first season, again, it's five episodes long, but the 4 other episodes, they feel more like how Seinfeld feels. And even the set is a little bit different. Jerry's apartment, the shape is the same, but some of the cupboards I think look a little different and everything like that in that first episode. But
and I think the humor really holds up. The fashion sure doesn't.
Fashion does not hold up.
But the humor does.
The humor still really does.
Funny show.
So yeah, if you've never watched this show, watch it. And if you have watched it, you should be throwing this on Hulu all the time. We don't throw it on enough.
We don't. Yeah. Where I think we'll start throwing it on more often.
I think we're going to.
Especially once
The Office leaves to
Netflix.
something else. Yeah. Although I guess we can get whatever that is too, probably.
We'll
I don't know. But hey, speaking of some shows that we love, next week we're going to be talking about Boy Meets World.
Oh yeah, from a similar time period, but for a different audience.
For a different audience, for the kids, for the young folk. It was a few years later when it came out, but this is a special request for my friend Adam.
Yeah, who's also a listener of the podcast.
Also a listener of the podcast. Yeah. A fellow Dupree out there. And my old college roommate. It was his birthday couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Adam. And he was like, hey, special episode of the podcast, Boy Meets World. I was like, for you, Adam? Definitely.
Yeah, in honor of your birthday, we're going to do it.
And I love Boy Meets World. So that is streaming on Hulu.
Yep.
So check that out on there. If you never watched Boy Meets World, oh my gosh, I don't know what it would be like watching it as an adult for the first time, but it's a fantastic show. And if you did not grow up with Boy Meets World, I'm sorry, you're missing out.
Yeah.
But it's on Hulu. The whole TGIF lineup is on Hulu, so you get it. Well, not like the later era TGIF when it was a bunch of weird stuff. Right. But that's all on Hulu. And do we have anything else to say about Seinfeld before we start wrapping it up here?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
Oh my gosh. So hey guys, thank you so much for listening. You should follow us on Facebook at You, Me, and TV, on Twitter at You, Me, and TV Pod, on Instagram at You, Me, and TV Podcast. If you want to email us, you can email us at You, Me, and TV Podcast at gmail.com. And please subscribe, give us 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And thanks so much for listening, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. Bye.